Welcome to this webcast for incoming students in the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm Paul Snigowski, Dean of the College. We're here to answer your questions. I'm joined today by my colleagues from the College office. To my left is Dr. Janet Tai, Dean of Freshmen and Director of Academic Advising. And to her left is Dr. Rebecca Poirot, Assistant Dean for Advising, and to my right is Dr. Nadine Gabadon, Assistant Dean for Advising. We know you have questions, and we look forward to getting to those during the course of this webcast today. Before we do that, just a couple of announcements about things that we expect you to be taking care of as the summer progresses. You should have heard from our office by email by now, and you should have also heard from your pre-major advisor by now. Your job is to work through the online orientation program Compass and to do your freshman questionnaire. And once you've done that, to respond to the invitation to talk with your advisor about course choices and curriculum. Pre-registration already started. It started this week on the 18th, and it will continue until July 13th. And it doesn't matter when during that time you put in your pre-registration, but you want to get in during that window. Freshman registration will then reopen August 24th.
July 24th.
July 24th. Thank you for that correction. So we'll remind you of those things again at the end of this webcast. And for now, we're going to go to questions and answer questions during the webcast. Dr. Poirot will be bringing up your questions for us.
Okay. A couple of questions that have already come in. One question we got is, if we're signing up for a class that contains both a lecture and a recitation, are we required to sign up for both?
Yes. That's the easy one. But also, there's directions on the Pen and Touch course registration, which tells you that you're supposed to sign up for all parts of a course. And sometimes there's a lab that goes with a course. Sometimes there's a recitation. Sometimes things are called lectures, and there's various pieces. When you go and bring the course up, the other pieces of it will be part of the course description if you click on the name of the course. So you should be able to do it, and you just put your requests, one after another into the course request system. And that's, I always like to think about this advanced registration more like an advanced request system, because you're telling the system in the best of all possible worlds what you'd like to have. And you should give it lots of information, more than probably your 4.5 course units that you'll need to take, because you may not get everything you want the first time out. So just think about it that way, and your pre-major advisor, and especially your peer advisor, will be really good at helping you sort of talk through how to think about that.
And thinking forward, I teach intro biology, which has a lab with it. And so thinking forward, once you come here into the beginning of your semester, there sometimes even can be a shuffle in that first week or so with lab sections that are associated with the lecture. It all works out, so don't sweat it, don't worry about it. People will help you get placed in the right recitation and the right lecture.
There's one that came in. I got emails from a peer advisor and a pre-major advisor. What is the difference between them? Who should I talk to first? All these advisors.
You want to take that one, Nadine?
Sure. So your pre-major advisor is somebody who is here. Okay, so that is somebody who is either faculty or staff here, at Penn, and and that person really is your primary resource in terms of talking about courses. I'm talking about possible majors. What do you want to do here at Penn? Do you want to do research? What is sort of your like an academic goal here, right? While you are a student. But what faculty and staff can't do quite as well is just to kind of help you get used to sort of getting used to campus. So that's what your peer is for. So your peer advisor is somebody like you, right? So that's maybe a sophomore or a junior, senior here at Penn, a fellow student who's here just to help to onboard you. So they will like to help to support you in terms of how to use Pen and Touch. How do you like register for courses. You know, what is it like to live on campus? You know, talking about dining and housing. You know, and they'll be here, like you know, on campus for you. You know, when you arrive, just to help you to get acclimated to Penn life. You know, so they're really a wonderful resource to kind of talk about, you know, what it's like to be a student. But your primary like academic questions should go to your pre-major advisor.
And just to complicate things, if you go on Penn in Touch, which is where all the information about your bill and your courses and all that transcript, all that good stuff is, there, if you go down on the left-hand side, there's another name there called a college contact. And what the college contact is a member of the college's advising staff, and that's all of us, who work with all of the pre-major advisors and all of the peer advisors. So in case you can't get a hold of somebody, there's, you know, a team of 3 who's always there. So you should be able to talk to somebody and get an answer to your question.
I'll just add one thing about the peer advisor, which is that I have certainly heard from many students who have either graduated or who are in their 3rd or 4th year here, that they found their peer advisor, as you were saying, Nadine, to be a really useful resource with things that maybe faculty and staff don't have access to or don't tend to talk to you as much about, things about life here and the ins and outs of how you do various things. So definitely take advantage of both your pre-major advisor and your peer advisor.
And one thing I was going to add about peer advisors, when we interview people who are interested in being peer advisors, oftentimes they'll say, you know, I want to do it because I had a good peer advisor who made my transition into Penn really good. And then there are some people who also talk about how difficult their transition was and how they want to be there as a resource for people who are having a hard time as well. So their motivation for being peer advisors is really to be there for you. So as Dr. Snigowski said, reach out to them and feel free to talk to them about, you know, the minutia of registering for courses, but also how you're feeling, because they want to be there for you. And let's see what else has come in. Here's one. I took the AP for BC Calculus. Do I have to take the Math Diagnostic Placement Test to tell me which course I placed into?
Probably, and just the answer to this question isn't simple, and that's why you need to talk to your pre-major advisor. There's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is, do you have that score? And if you know you got the 5 on the AP BC Calculus test, you will get a credit for Math 104. That credit's useful in many, many ways. That credit is also a good sign of how much foundation you have in math. So if you were interested in economics or any of the STEM fields, particularly the physical sciences, then you will probably have to go on with math. So what's the next step? So that's where the Math Diagnostic can be really helpful. It can help you figure out what the next step is. The other thing is, what if you're not sure? You might want to do one of those things, but you just don't think you want to do math now, and maybe putting off the Math Diagnostic feels like a good idea. Probably not, because you start losing your knowledge of math, I think particularly calculus, even faster than you lose your knowledge of a foreign language, which is notoriously quick after you stop using it on a regular basis. So my advice is, take the diagnostic, don't get nervous about it, just do the best you can, see where you place. It's always a question, you know, you can talk over with your pre-major advisor, you can talk over with the math department, but waiting and not taking it makes it sort of more of a burden to you if you're not quite sure. Now, there are people who know they never want to take a math course at Penn. They never want to do any economics at Penn that's going to lead that way. They're not going to do a STEM science field. Okay, don't take the Math Diagnostic. That's fine. But make sure you don't think you're going to change your mind ever in 4 years about this. So just get it over with would be my advice.
Great. There was another placement exam question that came in, which I think is probably mostly about the language placement exams. How do I know which level of classes I can register for if the placement exams aren't until NSO?
Yeah, I mean, so usually, you know, you'll talk to your advisor and kind of talk about, you know, how much language you've had in high school and how comfortable you are, and you want to kind of just do a best guess, right? So you can kind of like approximate, you know, how much language you've taken and what might be your like best placement. And then keep in mind that you have time to change your schedule later, right? So the language placement test happened, right during NSO. You still have about 2.5 weeks or so to adjust your schedule. So I would pick the course that looks like it's the best fit for you. And then when you take the your language test in the fall semester, then you can make those changes then.
And the language departments will work with you if in fact you guessed wrong.
Mhm.
So don't worry about that.
Right. And there's also a question about the intro biology sequence. There's someone who wanted to know the difference between biology 101 and 102, and then biology 121, which has a lab 123 in the fall and then 124 in the spring. And
Well, so either of these is suitable for students who want to do the biology major or who want to be pre-meds. 121 is intended for students with AP Bio background, and we do recommend that students with that background go into 121. But you can do either of them. You want to then look at the further requirements for the biology major. If you do 121, you're in one track and you take one less course later in the major, rather one more course later in the major than you would if you do 101, 102. Either is suitable. The key thing is with AP background, we recommend 121.
But I will say, and this is wisdom from many students over the years, if your biology experience was earlier in your high school time and you have been away from it for a while, 121 is much faster, there's much less review, and if you think you need the review, then the 101, 102 two-semester sequence is a way to go. So just think about that when you're talking to your pre-major advisor.
I agree with that. I've taught both courses, and so, or both tracks. Yeah.
And here's someone saying, if I'm pursuing a pre-med track, which pre-med course requirements should I fulfill my first semester, and what would a balanced course load look like with these requirements?
I'll start by saying I think it's important not just to think about your first semester, but to think out to your years here. You have the full 4 years to meet the basic things you're going to need for pre-med. And actually another thing to say about that question is that there is no pre-med track. There are lots of ways to be a pre-med. You could be an English major and have been a pre-med. The key thing is that you meet the basic
even get
science.
into medical school, even better than being pre-med, you get into medical school.
But the key thing is that you meet the basic science and the writing requirements and things that are needed for medical school applications. Okay, so that said, you do have some sciences to get through, and so a balanced sort of course load in your first semester, which is going to be a maximum of 4.5, would have a science course typically, either a biology or a chemistry. Depending on your results in the math diagnostic, you might think also about a math course in that semester. And then you should go looking for things that, as I said, balance those out. So you might see about a writing course. You might look into possibly a freshman seminar. You might even, if you're a pre-med, find a freshman seminar taught by somebody from the medical school or the biology department that would sort of fire up your interest in medicine more generally. So those are the kinds of things that would be my requirement. But I would say, don't sweat it and don't lock yourself into a mentality that there's only one way to do this, to go through your undergraduate years and wind up applying to medical school. There are many, many pathways to do it.
Successful pathways.
Yes.
And I would also add too there that there is no pre-med track, so you still have to have a major. So although you are coming in pre-med, you can't declare that as a major. So you still want to be thinking about what are your academic interests, right? So you want to balance those pre-med requirements, but also make sure that you have some courses that really interest you, because that's what's going to kind of help you to figure out what you actually want to study here.
And I work pretty closely with Career Services, and they have this wonderful health team that helps us get students ready to apply to medical school and take the MCAT and all those good things. And they will tell you, and I can tell you from just looking back over generations of students who've gone on to medical school, the thing to do is to figure out how to get a healthy science GPA your way. But medical schools really don't seem to care what your major is. So we have students in very good medical schools who were history majors, English majors, health and societies majors, philosophy, biology, definitely.
That's more typical.
Some
but,
chemistry, math major. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
They've and I'm not talking one or two in most of these cases. Psychology and health and society send very large numbers on to medical school. So you got to think what fits you, and that's, I think, a hard thing for someone to figure out in their first semester. So focus on the other questions, like what 4 courses or so can I take this semester? Gets me started, gets me some experience as I re-ask this question a couple of times as I work my way through.
And echoing what Nadine said, you know, even though you are interested in going into medicine, even though you think of yourself as pre-med, ask yourself, what am I interested in? Not what are my plans? Are you interested in pre-med? That's kind of a hard thing to say you're interested. What are you interested in? Are you interested in politics? Are you interested in how living things work? Are you interested in how chemical reactions occur? At that level, ask yourself what you're interested in, because that will help you to find the major match that's good for you, keep you happy, keep you strong in your major, and you'll have the better chance of success that way.
And major isn't destiny. Mostly your career will be determined if this major helped you prepare in many good ways, and there isn't a major that doesn't. You know how to write, you know how to articulate clearly about ideas, you'll learn some quantitative thinking. Yes, content in certain things is important, and you will get that, but in the end, it is building the mind that can go after the opportunities that are there, and that's not in any one major connected to any one job.
Here's one that just came in about a different major. The PPE, and that's philosophy, politics, and economics major, is a very dense major, which I think there's a lot packed in. So if I wish to pursue it, what is the best approach for organizing a workload for this major? Also, is it possible to pursue a double major with PPE and a subject area that is more artistic? There's a lot of questions in that question.
Which none of which can be answered right now because we don't know yet. There's good ways to get started in PPE, and I'll let some of my colleagues talk about them. But is it possible that you could connect this in a meaningful way, or do sort of alongside some kind of artistic major, fine arts, art history? It's possible. Something might be a minor. You may get into PP and discover, gee, I really like PP or E and not all three together, and work that out. But you don't know a lot of it yet. So go look at what's the entry courses that the PPE major suggests to you. There's a lovely list on the college website. Talk to students. Peers will talk to you about this. And if your particular peer is in a PPE major, we do have peer advisors who are, and they can make a connection for you. These are also, to be a PPE major, you still have to do a writing requirement. You still have your language requirement. You may want to take that math course and get that done. Economics is there. Plenty of, you got lots of ways to go. Find the path that kind of suits you in this first semester.
And I would echo, and I think, the question behind this question that I hear a lot is, what if I fall behind? And what I always tell, my advisees is that you cannot be behind because you just started. It literally is impossible to be behind, after freshman year because you have time. And so what's sort of, inherent in this question is, can I do it all? And the answer is you don't have to know yet. True, PPE is a larger major, but it's step by step, right? You have a limit of 4.5 courses, just like everyone else.
In the first semester.
Exactly. In your first semester, so look at the econ, look at poli-sci, look at philosophy, right? So look at those courses that are entry courses to that major, and try. I'm like 1 or 2, right? Get your writing and get your language and just try it out. And then, once you get through, those first couple months and it's time to start planning for spring, then you kind of I'm like sit back and then reassess and say, okay, I'm like, do I like this or do I not? You know, and then kind of, you know, plan like from there. So the real answer is that you don't have to know quite yet if you can fit it in because you're just starting. So feel free to just sort of let the process happen and start to try things out. And those kinds of answers, you know, like will come with time.
And I would just say that, you know, your interest in arts is great, the thought of combining that with the other things that you do. You don't necessarily have to manifest that interest as a major or a minor on campus here. There are all sorts of, depending on what you're interested in, you could become involved in theater productions and music and various other artistic manifestations of student groups that are involved on campus. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a double major or even a minor. Your life here can be plenty full without having to have, you know, sort of official academic credit for those things.
Or conversely, you might find that you really want to be a theater arts or a fine arts major and you become involved in campus activism or politics or debate. And it works the other way. I think sometimes students have several interests, but some they're more passionate about, and others they feel are more practical and they feel like they have to hedge their bets and do that. But I think you will find as you take all these courses where your true intellectual passion lies and where you're doing well. And if you decide you're a theater arts major and that's where you should go that way, and that will be your route to success. And if you decide PPE or one of the component parts of that, you could go that way. There's not necessarily a need to pile up majors or minors. That sometimes really dilutes your efforts and your engagement rather than burnishing anything. So, and there was another question, sort of related. I'm interested in pursuing pre-law. Which majors are better for me to choose than others? What type of advising is available for me?
Well, my scholarship involves a relationship between law and medicine, so I have run into a few pre-law students at Penn who've been my advisees and in my classes. And the first thing I can tell you is that law schools don't care what your major is. They think they would like to have a mind that knows how to manage large bodies of data. They know how to write clearly. You've got to be able to do some talking out loud and thinking out loud with people. That's lots and lots of majors. There is quantitative thinking that will become part of it. That's even on the LSAT. So, but that doesn't mean there is a major. And if you need, besides your pre-major advisors and advising in the college office, our partners over in Career Services have a team that helps students when they're applying to places like medical schools, law schools, graduate schools, and you can go and talk to one of the Career Services advisors on that team about what you need to do to apply to law school. You got plenty of time. Now, I will say this, there are plenty of majors who like pre-law students and will tell you, you must be a history major or you must be a PPE major, because that's where all the students who successfully get into law school go. Not so much. They come from all over to go to law school.
I've seen advisees major in environmental science. They were interested in environmental law. I've seen advisees major in music. They wanted to go into music entertainment industry law. I mean, there are many roads. So.
I think I would again add to that, ask yourself, am I interested in law or am I interested in going to law school? Does law really interest you? Is that one of your interests? And if it does, that's great. But in the meantime, while you're here, you can do any one of a number of majors in something that interests you and wind up qualifying yourself extremely well to take the LSAT and go to law school. So put what interests you first. Ask yourself, and again, not what major or what career I'm interested in, but what things to think about and dwell on am I interested in?
Here's one that just came in. My questions are, does a freshman seminar count as your writing requirement? And what is the difference between a lecture, seminar, recitation, and lab? And I think every year there's a little confusion about critical writing seminars and freshman seminars, and people start, confusing the two, but they are distinct requirements.
Definitely. Well, no.
Well, I'm sorry, the freshman seminar is not a requirement, it's
One's
an
a
option.
requirement.
Listen, don't listen to me.
Every student from any of the undergraduate schools has to take a writing seminar. It's a basic writing skill course. So think of the critical writing seminars by themselves. Freshman seminars are a gift. They are a wonderful set of courses offered to incoming students first and second semester in a variety of topics. Faculty are teaching something they love. They've picked out a research problem or a knotty question that they think that they can, examine with, explore with a bunch of people who don't know, maybe not know a lot about the subject, or maybe know a little bit about the subject, but would like to know more about how to examine this interesting type of problem or question. So freshman seminars, small numbers of students, interesting question, really committed faculty who like teaching these. It's a great and wonderful, I think, opportunity that you get. Freshman seminars are they fulfill one or another sector requirement. You have to go onto the college website to see which sector is being fulfilled by that, or ask your pre-major advisor. It's easy to find out. But taking a freshman seminar would also fulfill a sector requirement for you. So that's another thing in its favor.
Mhm. As a faculty member, I can tell you that we love teaching freshman seminars. I've taught one for many years. It's some of our most enjoyable interactions with our incoming students because it's a small number of students. There are lots of discussions, and you get to know the students really well in that setting. So I'd urge you to think about what interests you and maybe taking a freshman seminar in that. Now, to the distinction among these various types of class meetings. I've taught all of them, so I'll tell you my take on it, and then my colleagues here can give wrinkles that they have thought of. So a lecture typically is a class setting in which you go into a room and someone like one of us will stand in front of that room and present material. It's like what you're used to as lectures in high school. One slight qualification of that is that some of your classes might be in what's called an active learning format and be called a lecture, and what happens there is that there'll be a lot of give and take between the instructor and the class, but still it's a format in which there's an instructor in front of the room. A lab is something typically associated with a science class. It runs kind of in parallel with the science lecture series. And in those labs, you'll often be working with a lab people who've been hired to teach the lab section for you. Certainly in biology, that's true. We have a cadre of PhDs who teach our lab sections for first year of biology. And you'll go through a series of experimental exercises demonstrating principles and how to think about experiments. And these are hands-on science, and in the case of science, and they illustrate and flesh out for you the things that are brought out in the lecture, but they're separate. A recitation is a section that meets in association with a lecture course. Often it's led by a TA, or it sometimes is led by the instructor, him or herself. I've led recitations for my evolution course. And typically in the recitation, the idea is to either go over problems that you've been assigned, or go over some readings that you've been assigned that are sort of supplemental to the main track in the lecture. And it's a smaller group, and it's a more of a discussion, give and take format. Finally, a seminar. At a seminar, classically, you'll be in a group of, let's say, between 12 and 18, 10 and 18 other students. Often you'll be sitting at a very nice table. If you take my seminar, there'll be a pile of cookies in the middle of the table for you. And you'll go through a set curriculum of reading material that the instructor has planned out for you. But the format will be one in which the emphasis is on intense and probing discussion. In my own seminar, what I really look forward to is the magic that happens when the students get so into it that I just cross my arms and sit back and let them go at it. And once in a while I'll say, well, that's not exactly right, maybe we need to, but ideally that happens. So you'll be talking to each other often in a seminar. Any additions or?
No, that was
Corrections?
good.
Yeah.
And I think, the courses we were talking about, the critical writing seminars and the freshman seminars, are ways for you to experience that small group discussion where you are really active with your classmates and with your instructors. And I think, sometimes it's hard when you're coming in the first year in college. You're used to being in a high school and, knowing the teachers there. And sometimes, especially if you're in a big lecture class, the professor who's up there at the podium lecturing, you might feel nervous about going to office hours and talking with them. Taking a seminar and getting to talk with them right there is a great way to break down that anxiety, that nervousness, and build those muscles, so that when you are in lectures, you go knock on Dean Snegowski's door and say, hey, I didn't get it when you were going over that concept. Can we go over it together? And he's got maybe some cookies in there, and he's not as intimidating as he seemed in the lectures. So think about, when you're planning this year, a balance between lecture courses and seminars. And in addition to the balance between different disciplines, you want to put yourself in different types of environments in the classroom.
I can't resist adding one recipe for success to this, which is, even in a course that's strictly lecture, go to office hours.
Definitely.
Go to office hours and go way before the test. What happens for my own office hours is that I get lots of visitors the week of the midterm, before the midterm. Before then, things are pretty sparse, but the students who do take the time to come in right away, introduce themselves, we develop a relationship, and it becomes a working relationship for us. They feel free to come in, just as Rebecca said, and say, I didn't get it. I thought it was clear in lecture, but now I don't get it. Can we go over it again? And I'm delighted to do that, and all of our faculty are delighted to do that. The other thing that happens is sometimes you come in, we talk about that for a little while, and then we just talk about whatever interests us, because office hours are there for you. I'm not going to cut them short, and the other faculty aren't. And so it's your chance to really develop that relationship.
And faculty complain more about sitting there all alone than they do about being buried in their office
Absolutely.
hours.
Great. So there's a big question about the general education requirements, just kind of what is the difference between the sector requirements and foundational approaches. There are 16 of them. Do we have to take 16
No, there
courses?
aren't.
Well, that's what was written in the
First,
question.
we're going to talk about counting.
Okay, all right, we can talk about counting.
Well, first of all, don't be so daunted. The general requirement, you signed on to get a liberal arts education. So you want a broad education, which also gives you a good set of foundations and basic skills that any educated person in the 21st century needs. So those foundational requirements tend to be more you could think of them as more skill-based. A language requirement, a writing requirement, a requirement to think about the quantitative data. Those are the foundational requirements. There's 5 of them, right?
They might be thinking of the language if you take 4 language courses.
All right,
you need
okay.
16. I think that's probably the key thing.
It's a lot, but most
Okay.
students
Most
are
of us
taking
don't.
less.
I don't think the precision matters. I think it's,
Right.
it's
Right.
the feeling of being
Well,
overwhelmed that we
But I
want to
don't,
push
and
back
I don't,
against.
and I
student.
really think you don't need to be overwhelmed, because the other thing is there's 7 sectors, and then there's these foundationals. The sectors are about breadth. There's things like arts and letters and physical world, and some of these will speak to you directly, and you will love every course on the list, and others will be like, oh no, it's like eating my worst vegetable, I don't want to do
But it's
that.
good for you.
It's good for you. We'll help you find a course. There's course on every sector list, because they're very long lists. It's not like there's only 1 or so courses. Long list of courses. We'll be able to find you something that helps you broaden your educational background. And the other thing you don't quite recognize yet, because you haven't been here long enough to do this, is that sometimes a course will count in both the sector and the foundations. Also, you get courses in the sector that can count in your major. I mean, same thing for foundational courses and majors. All of those kinds of rules, don't worry about them, but they also help lessen this burden on yourself. And we go back and look at this statistically, the average number of courses most students use to fulfill the general requirement is 10 to 11, not 16. Honest.
Well, I think that was a good question because it did convey the nervousness of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Sure.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody looks at that list and they go, "Oh, calm down. This is not. It's not going to get in your way. You're going to be able to do what you want to do."
And
Even
every-
if you, yeah,
no, you go.
no, even if you had to do 16, which is very rare, but even if you did, that's 4 each year. And so it sounds like it's a lot, but it's, I mean, you know, it goes really quickly. And I love showing my advisees at the end of freshman year, even when we really haven't been focusing on requirements. I mean, the vast majority have finished like 4, 5, 6, 7 of them already. It's really not that hard to do. So I think there's a sense of that there's so many, but as long as you're sprinkling them in, you'll be fine. And if you're meeting, with us, or your advisor, I mean, you'll be fine. Like, we're not going to let you go rogue and take pottery like 6 times. Like, right? I mean, we're going to make sure that you are taking the courses that you need. So it's really, really like not something to worry about. We will help you get it done.
That's right. I was going to say something similar that, you do get them done little by little. And people, sometimes you're fulfilling a final requirement in your last semester, but everybody gets them done. And the other thing to remember is right now in this period of time, the first year and the second year, your primary goal is to identify the major that you will declare at the end of sophomore year by exploring courses in a variety of fields that interest you. So don't get fixated, don't get hung up on the general education requirements or checking off this, and this, because you will naturally. But if you were totally fixated on checking off the boxes and you weren't taking courses that truly interested you, you'd have a problem at the end of sophomore year because you wouldn't have identified what you really love or want to do intellectually at Penn. So
Although that is another way in which the
Well-
sectors can work for you, because there's a lot of courses in the sectors that would help you explore majors. So
true, if you used them that way, if you said, I want to try and fulfill this requirement and I'm going to choose this course because it looks really fascinating.
and that's
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
entry course to majors list, then I
Right,
can not.
yeah.
Right.
not-
Right.
To take the discussion of interest that we've had here, I've said you should think about what am I interested in. Well, what if you say to yourself, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm interested in. The general requirement and the way it pushes you out into these different areas, you should come here with the confidence that you're going to find something that really interests you. That's part of our plan.
Okay. Here's one. What happens if I don't get all the courses I choose during advanced registration?
You'll be just like everybody else. No, it's a very normal experience. Some students luck out and get them all. Most get 2 or 3. And then remember, once the system reopens on July the 24th, we're in the add period and drop period too. But you can, and there will be plenty of courses out there which you can pick and choose and add. And remember, you're an incoming first-year student. You got lots of things you can do. You will find by the time we're finished, looking at courses, 4 courses, you'll be set up for them by the time classes start, maybe a little bit later. But remember, that add period goes from July the 24th till sometime into September when the add period ends. So there's plenty of time and ways to look at courses and find new courses. So you will have a full schedule. But don't be surprised if you come back from advanced reg and, oh look, I only got 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's very normal. In cases like that, say that you got, say, 2 of them and you're kind of stuck, right? Because you're not sure what to pick next. Just talk to your pre-major advisor, and that person can help you to kind of finalize your schedule.
Here's one. If I choose a course that turns out to be too easy or too hard for me, can I switch out during the fall semester?
Yes, to a point. So we have, what's called the late add deadline. That's sometime around mid-September. It's about like 2.5 weeks into the semester. So at that point, you are permitted to add a course up until that deadline, or drop a course. So that's where you could switch. So you have about 2 weeks to switch. If you're going to do that, do it with thought, do it carefully. You know, the ideal would be to have your schedule as set as you can, but if you find out that you're really not, you know, in the right course, it's fine to make some changes. That can happen sometimes, you know, with math, for example. You know, you may start out a course, and math even has some flexibility. So talk to your professor. You know, if you think that you may be in the wrong level. If you are in a course that might be really challenging, then maybe you do need to switch, or maybe it's just talking to your advisor about resources, you know, and ways to do better. So yes, you have sort of like a 2-week window. But I would say, you know, do that with your advisor to kind of talk about, you know, what makes sense. Because sometimes switching makes sense, but sometimes it's just sort of navigating college and getting used to, you know, what courses, you know, should feel like, and sort of I'm adjusting to life here.
Right, and
Yeah.
figuring out, you know, is everyone else reading this stuff so much faster than I am, or why are these problem sets taking me so long? I mean, we have this wonderful place called the Weingarten Learning Resource Center, which
Right.
they can help you figure out, oh, that was a great habit you had in high school, but it's not going to be as effective here in college. Let me help you learn a different way to learn it. And sometimes just that little tweaking can make all the difference and in a course. Finding a course too easy, most I've ever seen that is either in a language and in a math
Yeah.
course, and both those departments will work with you very early on, but you know, if they see a problem, to move you to the right place, because they know how important starting in the right place is. So don't worry about that too much. Speak up as soon as you get that
Yeah.
kind of weird, hinky feeling it's the wrong.
Yeah, the key here is to talk to your instructors and your advisors about this. Don't make that determination on your
Yeah,
own.
don't assume a lot.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, going back to the resources, what Janet mentioned, the Weingarten Learning Resource Center is one that I often recommend to advisees, you know, for study strategies, for reading, for time management, lots of different ways to help you navigate the course almost on a meta level. There's also a tutoring center if you feel you need content help with a specific subject. That's no extra charge. But you do need to go through the steps of setting up, either getting a one-on-one tutor for a course, or using a kind of online scheduling, satellite tutoring by the week, and several courses that they do have tutors available for. There's a writing center where the Marks Writing Center, where you can work with, I think it's peer.
Both the
tutor.
tutoring center
Yeah.
and the writing center are peer tutors, so
Yes.
they're upperclassmen who
Right.
have excelled in that particular subject
right.
and are offering to help other students do well.
But they can work with you on outlining, they can read a draft and give you feedback, and not to forget office hours as one of the first places to go if you feel like you're struggling in a class.
Right.
Leaning on your professors, on your TAs, and if you're nervous about doing it, talking it through with your advisor first and then getting up the courage to go do it. But there are lots and lots
Yeah.
of places that can help you academically on campus, and many people use them if they feel like they're struggling, or they don't. They just want to see if they can learn new tricks to make themselves even stronger. So.
One thing to add to this is that, and you may not think of it this way, but it's the strong student who goes for help, not the weak student. The strong student goes for help in the same way that the strong scientist or the strong lawyer consults her colleagues about what she's thinking about. And that's, you know, and so what you should expect as you come here is that the ways of learning and studying that you have evidently mastered in high school, because we're bringing you here, those are not necessarily complete yet. You should expect to expand in your ways of learning and your ways of studying and so forth. And we have the resources here to help you with that, both faculty and staff. And you should expect that to be part of your journey here. Not just the addition of more knowledge, but the addition of more knowing how to know and how to learn.
And that's what that time in your first semester is meant to do, to figure out, I could use a little extra help here. Because many students come in and they think, oh, 4.5 course units, that's 4 courses. So that's only 12 hours of class compared to what I did in high school. I got all this extra time. Turns out not so much. There is always my instructors believe I'm spending X 3, 5, 2, whatever number of hours outside of class on those problem sets, reading that stuff, writing those, response paper, whatever it is that they want you to be doing. And you may have to figure out how to do them in an effective way that doesn't take up all the time. Not to mention that's going to be this is a really lovely place here. There's lots of social demands, and there's interesting extracurricular things to do, and there's the Patrick, gym. There's just wonderful things which will quickly fill up your time. Not to mention the fact that you may occasionally want to sleep. Eating is always good, and somebody will have to figure out how to get your clothes clean. And mom and dad or whoever was helping you before may not be around. So just think about this. Life will be a little more complicated for you when you get here. And some of that time, you may have to say, wait a minute, I may want to go spend some time in that Weingart Learning Resource Center, or it would be good to see this peer tutor over in the Writing Center, once a week or every, when I have a writing. You just don't know yet. But we gave you plenty of time. You've got this first semester to get landed on your feet and figure out how you can be your most effective self going forward.
And we've had questions about getting started in doing research. And that can look very different depending on disciplines. So you could talk about social sciences, humanities.
Many different things.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's completely in line with what we've already said, which is reach out, talk to people. There are, 10,000 roughly undergraduates on this campus, hundreds of faculty. It's a big, big place. It's not the kind of place where somebody can even take you in hand personally and say, oh, would you like to come join my team and do research? Instead, we expect you to think about what you're interested in and what you want to do, and to reach out to people, to go talk to them, knock on doors, send emails, so forth. So this is partly on you, and it's partly on your initiative to reach out. It is a good idea, if you think you want to do research, to start thinking about this early. I wouldn't say try to jump right into it in your first semester here. I think just get adjusted, do well in your courses, figure out how to do college in that first semester without the addition of going after research. But in your second semester of your freshman year, some opportunities will present themselves. There's a program here through the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships called PERM, the Penn Undergraduate Research Mentorship Program. PERM, P-U-R-M. And PERM invites faculty to put proposals in for research across all fields. And those proposals, the faculty will be chosen as being funded for those proposals, and then the faculty members offer funding to come do research with them. And for a lot of students, this is a way between their freshman and seminar years, sophomore years, that they get involved in research. I have 2 students in my own biology lab right now who started as PERM students after their freshman year. So PERM is one of the really definite opportunities. But even aside from fairly formal opportunities like PERM, just getting out there and talking to people, faculty and others doing research, telling them you're interested, getting in a conversation about it is the way to open those doors.
But also remember, there is a kind of overt outreach in that the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships, our partners in everything's got an acronym name at Penn, so this is CURF. So over in CURF, they have upperclassmen who are peer research advisors.
That's
who
right.
will talk
Yeah.
to you about that. We partner with them and with College Housing to bring programming into the college houses, which explores, so you don't know what research is, how you might do it, and they'll bring different people in to talk, and oftentimes it's over dinner in a college house in a very informal setting, so you should take advantage of the majors and more dinners and the various other kinds of opportunities in your college house to learn about these things. CURF has a whole array of programming. They have this great symposium, poster symposium, early on in the semester, where they have students who have been PERM received PERM grants in the previous summer have to present a poster of their kind of research. And this is, it's wonderful because it's your fellow students telling you about the research experiences they've had. And oftentimes when I'm wandering through there, the conversation's about, so how did you get started? Or I never thought about doing research, and that was an archaeological dig. How do you figure that out? And you're a biology student, what are you doing on this dig in Mesopotamia? I mean, it's really great conversations, but that's the kind of, just get yourself out there, and you don't have to be signed up with the lab or, working in the rare book room the very first thing. Slow down, figure it out. And I will also add, if you have work study, or even if you don't, if you're interested, sometimes people have grants. There are all kinds of research jobs that are out there that you could go look for once you get on your feet here and get established here at Penn. So it's kind of hard not to do research here at Penn, because the other more sort of secret way you find out about research, and it's not secret really, it's just that students don't actually think about it, but in your classes, those instructors teaching your classes are doing research. People love to talk about their research. If you're interested in it, go chat them up. TAs, they're all graduate students by and large, but some of them are doing fascinating research. Again, go talk to them about it. They can make connections to other people. So exactly what Dr. Snigowski said about just have conversations. That's how you figure it out, what you want to do.
One question about studying abroad. Student says, I'm interested in studying abroad. When do students usually go abroad? How many semesters of a language do I need? And how does it work with financial aid?
Sure. So
Tell them why we all pointed at
So-
you.
So everyone pointed at me because I coordinate international education in the college office, and so all of the assistant deans in the college office all do study abroad. I'm advising, and if you go onto our website, you'll see that we all advise for different regions. So I advise for Australia and New Zealand, and Dr. Poirier has areas in Europe. Yeah, okay.
Italy, Sweden, Switzerland, and Greece.
Right. So, so if you had questions about particular programs and courses, then I would definitely send you to that person. So I sort of coordinate it overall, but there are specialties in the office. In terms of when people usually go abroad, that is definitely something to start thinking about freshman year. But most students go junior year. We may have a handful that may go senior year, but I'd say by and large it's fall or spring of junior year. And that means that you really want to start to narrow down where you may want to go and which program you would want to go in sophomore year. So you may start to look at programs pretty seriously in that fall, and then start applying in that spring. In terms of financial aid, these are Penn approved programs, which means that you're paying Penn tuition. So whatever you are paying to go here on this campus, you would pay to go there as well. All of your credits would come back as Penn credits. They would show up on your transcript as Penn credits. So it's nice because it's a really affordable way to go and study somewhere else. So if you're worried about financial aid and affordability, then definitely think about studying abroad, because I think Penn does a really nice job of making it very affordable for everybody. It was
Language.
and language. Thank you.
Yeah.
So and that can really vary. It really depends on the program. I mean, so we have programs obviously that are English speaking, and you wouldn't need to take a language, and then we have programs that may be in France or Spain, and you may need up to sort of a 6 semester level of a language. So it really kind of ranges. It would be unlikely that you would need more than a 6 semester of a language, but there are sort of ranges all between there. So what I would say is, get to campus, start taking courses, start thinking about, what you want to do. If you're thinking about going abroad to a country where you would need to speak a different language, it doesn't hurt to start looking just to see what kind of language levels you may need now, so that you can plan ahead. Particularly if you're starting, with the first level of a language, because you may need to start taking it now. so that you're ready to go abroad. But start looking at the programs, kind of casually, just to see what's out there. There's no need to make a decision, but it's nice just to have the information, and know what's out there. And then, at some point, maybe in the spring of your freshman year, it's fine to start to reach out and start having conversations. So at least, over the summer, you can start to think about things and look at programs in a more, informed way and systematic way. Exactly.
And the place we're going to tell you to go and look at, you can get to it through the college website, but we have partners in an office called Penn Abroad, and they just have a brand new website. It's beautiful. It's got lots of information about how much language, about whether it's a semester-long program, whether there are shorter-term things, because we now have some what we call global seminars, where a student will take seminar here during a regular semester, and then maybe during spring break or at the end of a semester go for a short time to to another country as an enriched part of that course. We also have internships that students are doing abroad, and that, again, the Penn Abroad website can help you find all of them. So there's lots of opportunities. It also depends on your figuring out, how does this going abroad experience fit into my other agendas here at Penn? And that is why it's kind of a joint advising effort between our partners in Penn Abroad and the advisors in the college office. Because you got to sort of work, how does this fit into my bigger plan of what I want to do and be?
We've got about 5 more minutes, and there was a question that came in about the Penn Reading Project this summer, so we should get that in there. I saw a note about the Bridge of San Luis Rey by Thornton Wilder, and I was wondering if that's the summer reading assignment for freshmen. Yes. And when we will be receiving more information regarding the assignment. So,
Well, our partners in NSOIA, so the New Student Orientation Academic Year Initiative, okay, where we have a whole year of programming that goes along around the Penn Reading Project. This book was published in 1927. I bet you can find a copy of it in lots of places if you don't want to wait for the interactive. And this is a new thing we've been doing with the Reading Project, where the text is actually an interactive text, so you get the text electronically. You can read it on your computer and have interactive conversations with the people that are part of your discussion group, which you will have on the Friday after you get here. That's when
August 24th.
Yeah.
And I think people are automatically assigned to discussion groups.
Yes,
so
you don't worry
will
about
happen.
that. That will happen, but later. But if you're dying to get a jump on the reading, you can find the book a lot of places. They did not have, and I looked this morning when I knew we were going to do this, to see if I knew when the interactive copy of the book will be up there. It's not there yet, but it's coming very soon.
And this Penn Reading Project meeting, where you meet with your group and the discussion leader, who will be somebody like one of us, will be a seminar format.
Mm-hmm.
Your first seminar format in college.
And it's across all the schools, and I mean all 12 schools. So some of our colleagues in medicine and the School of Design love the Penn Reading Project because they get to interact with undergraduates, and they come and they spend the day with us. So that's great. You get to meet faculty from all over the place. You'll be mixed with students from all 4 undergraduate schools that are in the first year class. And it is the notion of this being a whole year of academic interest. So it's the year of why. And there'll be some really intriguing things going on. Films, panel discussions, you can get grants for student activities around this question of why. And so I really think this could be an intriguing year. We've been doing this for a while. And it'll be your first chance to become part of the intellectual community, which is the University of Pennsylvania. So please take advantage of it.
I mean, I think the book, and there is information about it online on the Penn Reading Project website, but it is pushing you to think about how humans attempt to explain why tragedy occurs.
In this particular book. Yeah.
Right, and I think, one of the things that, one thing that is foregrounded in writing about it is that the last few sentences from it were used after 9/11 by Tony Blair, but which is a tragedy that people were trying to explain and understand. But it also harks back to the earthquake in Lisbon in 1755, when a big earthquake killed, I think, a quarter of the population of the city, and it inspired a big theological and philosophical wrestling with, how could this happen on a religious holiday? What does this mean about God? And, Voltaire's Candide came out of that. I think some of the same themes are in this, although it's not a natural disturbance. It's the falling apart of a bridge, which is human technology. But, as you read it, think about it situated in that sequence of events. Think about the tone in which the book is written as well, because it's easy to think that it's a sentimental celebration of human spirit. Look at the tone that the author uses and see what you think. And I would also say, as a historian, think about the fact that it came out in 1927, and the Scopes trial was in 1925, which
That's
is
right.
when his high school teacher was tried for teaching evolution in the schools.
Indeed.
So I'm wondering if this was on Thornton Wilder's mind, but it's certainly in the air, and it's certainly, as we have a monk in this book wrestling to figure out why these people died, I think it should be in the mix. So.
There you go. Do we have any more questions?
We
or
have
are
more
we
questions,
wrapped out
but
of
it is
time?
5, and so your questions should come to advisors, to all your advisors.
And so just a quick reminder, do that compass, talk to your advisor, your pre-major advisor, talk to your peer advisor, and then have fun with Advanced Reg with all of the possibilities there, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.